All right, well, let's do it. The first item I have is exactly what we were just talking about, which is the minutes from the July 28th meeting that Joe circulated. I took a look at them. They're short and sweet. They look good to me.
I move that we approve the July 28th meeting minutes as written.
Second. Any discussion, Joe? Do you have any problems with your drafting?
I'd have to bring them up again. For some reason, they're not coming up. I don't know why, but they're not coming up. So I'll the only thing oh, there they are. Come on, open up.
Did you actually? You think you may actually have a comment to them that you want to tweak?
No, I took care of it. There was one thing that I had a question mark on, but I took care of it. So
okay, good. You spelled my name right, which is not many people do. So that was pretty good.
Well, I've been known to get people's names wrong, and it was mighty embarrassing. So
believe me, my name has been butchered for my entire life. So you wouldn't be the first person to get it wrong if you did get it wrong. All right, so good. So where are they deemed approved? Let's vote. All in favor of approving the meetings? Do we need a roll call vote? Jesse?
Stein, aye.
Mr.
Palmer, Palmer, aye.
And Mr. Biscoe is an aye. All right, so they are duly approved. And I'll take the minutes for this meeting. And I think, just general thoughts on minutes. I've done more detailed minutes in the past. You have to Jess and Joe. I think, we're not a real board that's making decisions that people are going to sue us over. They're going to want to scrutinize the minutes. I mean, I sort of agree with Joe's approach. Just keep them short and sweet. And, we don't need to go into a ton of.
I had no problem with the way that they were written. They're
I
very
think
good.
that's a pretty good approach. All right. So that piece of business is over. And so, the only other thing I have is just to talk about the report I circulated earlier this evening. My updated, what I was kind of viewing is, I guess I'm doing keeping the master. You guys give me stuff to feed into, and I'll keep the master one going so we don't have 6 different versions floating around, if that makes sense. I'm adding stuff as well. So whatever comments we get and additions from any of us, if you feed them to me, I'll put them into the master form. And so just as an example, Jesse, your parts on the zoning table of uses and data that you put in and that you sent to Katrina, and she put comments in, I've incorporated those comments in here. And the only thing I think I put into my cover letter, I don't know how you feel about that, Jesse. I was thinking that having the table of uses right there in the middle of the narrative, the reason I thought it make sense to move it to a schedule is it makes it a little bit clunky to have it right in the middle of the narrative. It breaks up the narrative with a big long table that takes up a page.
Yeah. No, that looks good. I reviewed your updated draft, and I agree with you. There's one thing, Tom, if I could just share my screen for a second. Let's see. I just want to pull something up. Thanks for your patience.
You can show me how to share screen. I think I'm one of the only people left in the modern world that doesn't know how to share screen.
You guys see this okay?
Yeah, looks great.
Cool. So this is you did on your draft, you corrected this. What I'm showing now is Karina's response to my request for her revision, and obviously her revision is correct, whereas my submission was not surprisingly. And you incorporated all this very well into that schedule format, which I certainly agree with, presenting it that way. On the adaptive reuse section, I just wanted to draw attention, this did not make it into your draft.
I did not see that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Because Karina didn't comment on it or didn't notice it, and that's okay.
because I put a question there in my draft saying, hey, Jesse, do you want to weigh in on this? And now I'm seeing, geez. Sorry, can I just pull up your draft real quick so I can read that?
Is it too small?
I just have bad eyes.
So what I was basically just referencing,
Yeah.
guys, is the I had attached when I sent my submission the historic adaptive reuse bylaw, and it does say in apartments and condos are an allowed use. So just so
Are an allowed use.
yep.
So what's our point there?
That looks like. Sorry. One moment, please.
Oh, and 174.13.8 is what you're saying. Okay, gotcha. So, because my point was adaptive reuse of historical buildings.
It's not coming up now.
Oh, not clear whether it could be converted to multifamily. Your point is it says condos in there someplace, so that indicates that it does allow for multifamily.
And
Is
of
that your
course,
point?
when I'm trying to do it now, it's not coming up. Do you guys have the 174-13.8 handy so we can look at it?
I do. Yeah, I printed out because Katrina attached it to her email. I don't know if you have it, Joe, or want to.
Sorry, I was looking for something else. What was you asking me about?
The adaptive reuse zoning article.
Adaptive reuse zoning art, and who would it be from?
Oh, that was
Found it,
from.
guys. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, perfect. Katrina circulated today in her email that, and you wouldn't be faulted for not seeing it. We all have jobs, and so we can't pay attention to every single email that comes in during the course of our day. But Jesse circulated it earlier today.
Oh,
So
Can you guys see this now?
Yeah.
Okay. So where I was, maybe this is the part that I'm confused by, is it says here under a commercial/municipal. Commercial in my professional world means anything 4 units or up.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you mean.
That's why, to me,
Yeah.
my read on this is apartments or condominiums here on B.
To be honest, Jesse, this is not looking familiar. I think I looked at uses permitted under residential buildings and stopped.
Right.
Because you know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Because I didn't go further, but good catch.
It says it here, right. So you were looking at that, and I was looking here.
Yeah, totally.
So
get
if
it.
you being also or probably more versed in commercial real estate than me, would you agree, Tom, that 5+ units of residential constitutes a commercial building?
Yeah, and I'd say even more importantly, the zoning bylaw is considering apartments and condos to be a commercial use. So condos, there's apartments are residential. So I think that number one just talks about more single family residential. And then I think the way I read is I'm seeing your view of it. I think I agree with you, Jesse. Number two is commercial buildings are treating multifamily housing as a commercial building.
So,
and apartments and condos, go in there.
So Tom, would you be comfortable kind of updating that section?
Yeah.
Okay. That was my only, other than.
That's a good one.
But the rest of your draft to me, as far as the zoning stuff, is spot on.
All right, good. And I think, it's interesting, just as a quick comment, because I think, we had this B1, which is the major residential development section. And, when I'd written that originally, I don't know, a couple months ago now, I was just surprised when I really dug into the MRD zoning bylaw, how restrictive and sort of nonsensical it is, and really it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's anti multifamily housing. You know, it just doesn't allow it. And so I noticed they circulated the master plan today, and we've heard about this in SHOPC too, Jesse, as you know, but they mentioned them in the master plan about how the MRD needs to be revisited and made less restrictive. So we're not the only people talking about the MRD. So I think that what we put in here will, I think, hopefully resonate with the masters above us as reinforcing the need for the town to revisit the MRD zoning bylaw and make it so it facilitates the creation of affordable housing, multifamily housing, rather than thwarting it, I guess.
And you know what's funny about that? By the time like a plan is actually done to, you know, for a development on this site, the zoning code very well may have been updated along those lines.
Oh, yeah, right. It could have been if somebody would have started it.
Not suggesting we reconvene or anything.
Well, I mean, you know, right. That's another conversation for our other board when we have different hats on. But for our purposes, if you know, we're just, again, I keep harping, well, we have these hats on, we're just a research and report board, not a policy board, but we are pointing out here, hey, you know, the point of this is the development potential is X. If you want to convert this to affordable housing that's of interest, you could do hypothetically 15 units, but problem is the zoning doesn't support that. The zoning just has obstacles to doing that. So, and then let the powers that be above us decide that the zoning is worth changing so it's not so restrictive. So anyway.
I mean, so I agree with you on the MRD point. But currently it seems like adaptive reuse might be, if it doesn't change, might be a path forward for apartments.
So the only thing is here that adaptive reuse is this, you know, we sort of talked about this before. If that is applicable to the school building, that'd be great, you know, because
right.
Strauss, I'm sorry, we're drawing a blank on his name, the gentleman who spoke to us from the Mass Builders. I want to say Santa Claus, but
Joe, didn't he say maybe 6 units were possible?
Yeah, he said 6 to 8. So for the adaptive reuse, if that comes into play to allow multifamily apartments and condos in the school building, that's great. That translates into 8 units, but it still doesn't go to the next question of what you can do with the rest of the site, right? Because the adaptive reuse is only the adaptive reuse of the historical building, which is the school building. So that's not gonna give a developer or the town a zoning permission to build additional townhouses on the property. You know, if we want to get up to, if the town wants to get up to more than just the 8 in the building, if the site will support, you know, another 7 or 8 units for a total of, you know, 13 to 15 units, the adaptive reuse is only going to go towards the 6 to 8 units in the actual building. It won't overcome the MRD limitations on putting other units on the property. So, but it's still a tool. I mean, it's still something that somebody can use, and maybe weighs in favor of keeping the school building there rather than tearing it down and putting up new townhouses.
So it looks like where we're a little bit light is on the economic feasibility piece, which is a little bit outside of my purview.
Yes. So what I was planning to do with that is to rehash some of the stuff we talked about a little bit earlier on in our subcommittee existence, which is, you know, some of the concepts of, you know, if we want to develop this, if the town wants to develop this for true official affordability requirements, that it would have to do if it got state programs, meaning 80% AMI, then the units would have to be affordable and sold or rented at a low price and low rent to someone who's at 80% of AMI, which is, I think we figured out before, I don't have the data in front of me, it's something like $75,000 or something like that. And we had this concept that we talked about earlier that, for purposes of Southborough, that's one way to try to achieve affordable housing, is to satisfy that I'll call low affordability standards that are under official state programs and state law. Or do we want to have, does the town want to have an less formal definition of affordable, where they want to make it affordable to, people at say $100,000 a year who, are the school teachers and the firefighters and administrators and people like that, Jesse, when you and I have our other hats on, we think, oh, we'd like there to be more housing affordable to those people, and not just have Southborough affordable only to doctors and lawyers and, hedge fund managers. And, we want a diverse mix of people with different incomes. So, if they want to make it affordable at the more $100,000 income level, then the units can be sold at a higher price point and still be affordable to that level of income and be affordable. And that may make it more attractive to developers, because they can potentially get a higher return and have a higher incentive to actually do a project like this. Whereas if they can only sell it at 80% AMI, it may not be worth their effort to do. But if you do go that unofficial route, you won't be able to qualify for affordable, grant programs that require affordable housing if they don't meet that 80% AMI threshold. So that's sort of the subject matter that I was planning maybe in the next draft to try to flush out a little bit more and incorporate some of that stuff for you guys to review. And we're light on it just because I haven't drafted it yet. I haven't gotten around to drafting it. Does that make sense to you guys? Thoughts?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
As far as, I had a question as far as, narrative, in terms of, at least, I'm sorry I didn't send this around, because I actually thought I sent this to you, Tom, but before I'd gone on vacation, I had updated that spreadsheet of all the programs that I had.
Yeah.
That I'd taken from the state. I updated that to make sure that I'd gotten the details right. In the last meeting, you talked about converting that, or at least presenting it in paragraph form as opposed to on a spreadsheet. And I didn't know how serious you were about trying to convert it.
Yeah, so my thoughts on it, I thought that table was pretty good, and I guess it's similar to my thoughts for consideration, similar to what we decided to do with the table of uses. I thought that maybe that schedule and that spreadsheet of 10 different programs might be a good exhibit to attach to the report. And then I thought maybe, and I was going to ask you about this during this call, that's one of my agenda items, is to say, were that 10 sort of collated from a larger body of, I'm just making this up, 50 programs, and you said, okay, that one doesn't apply, but these 10 really are more germane and these come into play? Or is it that these are the 10 DHCD housing programs, and you haven't really gone through and done a deep dive into them to see which ones would be most applicable to here, or not?
Yeah, I can tell you those were pretty much most all the programs off the website.
Okay.
Most all of them do apply to us, and depending upon, most of them actually apply to state and municipal governments, and so there are very few that I can go back and look through the spreadsheet, but literally, maybe only one or two of them are exclusive to private. Most of them are all open to public, which, it's public money. So I think they wanted to be that way. So you have, public, nonprofit, and profit, but most all of them are pretty much open to municipal and government. So, and depending on how what they decide to do later, I wouldn't exclude any of them anyway. Because if they decide they want to go with a quasi-private public,
Yeah.
so it makes sense. The thing was that in the way the spreadsheet was, the way I cut up pieces and put them in the spreadsheet, it was going to be awkward to try and convert that to paragraph form, which was why I was asking the question, because a lot of it I was sort of, and it's not. I also wrote like a 2-page sort of summary of the conversation I had with the person at the state agency. And at the end, I actually, wrote a, preamble to that table saying that it should be used only as a guide, not as a reference. Because I think it's, like, as you're saying, I mean, it's sort of dangerous to take any one of those things out of context in the program that it's dedicated to, or the way it's written in the program as a verbatim when you cut out part of it and put it in the spreadsheet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So one thought I had was whether you thought of those 10, and I haven't done a really close review of them, but just a couple of thoughts for conversation for the narrative. Is it worth going through and just, picking the 1 or 2 or 3 that you think might most come to bear to our project? Whether I'm just making this up. If there's certain ones that are focused on historical preservation, if there's certain ones that are specifically tailored to affordable housing versus just multifamily housing, it might be doing a 2 or 3 sentence blurb on just those. And the thing that you just said really quickly before I lose it in my head, it's a very interesting point to me, and I think would be good for this report. And it goes kind of with my section on the affordability of the economic feasibility, is which ones of those are available to private developers? Because I think we're kind of making a point, hey, there's a tension between private developer and the town developing, and private developers are better at this stuff. They can do it more efficiently, but they don't have enough incentives to do it. Maybe these state programs, or they have access to it, may make it worth their while and give them the money to make it profitable for them to do it. So I would personally be interested in knowing, you just mentioned that there's 1 or 2 that are exclusive to private developers. I'd be interested in knowing a little bit more about the details of those that are available and whether those might come to bear on this project.
Well, I mean, I can, because of the way the spreadsheet's set out, I mean, I can tell you right now, most of them are both.
They're both. Oh, gotcha.
They're set up to do either. And I can only guess that the reason why most of them are set up to do either is partly because of 40B and encouragement of private development.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go down the list and tell you almost right off how easy it is with the spreadsheet. I mean, low income tax credit is both. Home investment partnership program is both.
So like a low income tax credit, like right off the bat, I don't think that applies here, because I don't think we would, those wouldn't, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I think the low income tax credits don't necessarily.
It would apply more for private. It would definitely apply more for private than non. It's private,
but it wouldn't go to development costs. In other words, if it costs a developer, let's just call it $300,000 a unit to develop this property, and they think that doesn't it's not worth doing it because they can only sell it for $350,000. It's just not worth a while. But if they get a state program that can offset their development costs and bring that cost down to $200,000, then that's going to make it. But the low income tax credit, it doesn't really help with the development costs, because I think that just says that's incentivizing them to build it at full cost and to get tax credits if they. Well, I guess that's incentivizing them to include affordable units in their buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with it, but I would tend to include it because it's one of those programs where if if you're setting up the development for a private developer to come in, that's one of the things that they could use to offset it. And it's actually for nonprofit or profit. So even if you're a municipal, you probably have to set up a nonprofit corporation. But like I said, the one reason I like the spreadsheet form is because it's pretty easy to go through and pick out which ones are which. And for the purposes of an exhibit, I would probably just leave it most all intact, mainly just because depending on what their decisions they're going to be making later, it's very simple. There are only X number of programs in it. The only one that doesn't really fit with the rest of them is the one from CDAC, which I added to the list because it it actually has seed grants for, for planning purposes. So you can go in and try and get a planning grant for $15,000, which is the type of thing that, if the town wants to move ahead with it, is the type of thing that we would all want to get.
Gotcha.
Get $10,000 or $15,000 to help build an initial plan to, sort of launch a more full-blown project.
Yeah, so just so you know what I was thinking, Joe, is that we would keep this entire spreadsheet intact as an exhibit, and then just in our narrative section, try to pull out some of the highlights of that. If you think it's not worth doing, I'll defer to you. Is it worth pulling out a couple of programs just in our narrative to highlight a couple of the programs, or do you think it's just worth not even just saying, hey, attached here too as Exhibit B is a list of 10 programs that could be brought to bear, and leave it at that? I mean, we don't need to do a deep dive into any of these programs really for our purposes. We're keeping things at a high level.
I think what I'd probably say is, at least from my reading of the programs themselves, and from the conversation with the agent, which was that, you can combine any number of these buckets, which is sort of part of the advantage to having some diversity in the types of housing and for the audiences that you want to build it for. So until you have your project developed, we could pick one or two just to highlight, but the reality is that we may want to go into 2 or 3 or 4, depending on what type of, client you're looking for, whether it's, handicapped or elderly or veterans or, all the subgroups that you can sort of go after with some of these programs.
Gotcha.
And pull from the buckets, basically, which is, I wrote about a 2.5 2-page preamble about the conversation and saying basically, getting into what he recommended, which was exactly that, which was, get in early, get your plans in early, even if they're not quite done, get on the radar, go for as many buckets as you can, because you don't know which buckets they might pull from to fund your project. You don't have to have it 100% nailed down. And then the next year you can come back with a more specific proposal based upon what all the details intact, and be a little bit more specific maybe. But the reality is, if you're really going for the free money, he literally was pretty much advocating for throwing spaghetti on the wall. And
yeah, so maybe that's what the narrative part of the part is. Then not necessarily go into any detail in any particular program, but just making the point that, hey, there are multiple programs available. Attached here too is schedule of 10 of them that could be brought to bear from either the town or a private developer who may want to do this project. And here's some tips. The thing is, they're not limited to 1 or 2 of them. They can do multiple ones of them. And in our consultations with DHCD and other people, they've said that you can and should, whoever wants to develop this can and should apply to multiple of these programs, because they may, as you say, you don't know which ones all of them won't get funded, but if you increase your chances of getting any of them by applying to multiple, and possibly you get more than one. Maybe that's the narrative.
And you certainly weren't wrong about the different types. I mean, some of them are new construction. There are a couple that are just rehab. Some of them are acquisition. Some are, a mix of them. So, I mean, and there's one or two that are specific. One of the contingents is new construction or reuse. But like we're talking about, until we figure out how they're going to structure the project.
So just give them all these options. Yeah, I see your point. Give them the whole spreadsheet and say, here are all these options.
Yeah, and like I said, I apologize, because I actually thought that I sent this stuff to you before I left, which is why I was looking for it.
Your spreadsheet and your narrative from your conversation with the DHCD, I got it.
Oh, did you? Oh, I did send it. Okay.
I reviewed it. I got it all. I have your spreadsheet right here.
I was gonna. What I wanted to ask you is, because when I wrote that, I wasn't sure, based upon the rest of the document, how that narrative of the conversation, whether it was in a tone and format that fit the document at all.
Well, I think probably not for our narrative, because we would want to take your narrative there and just distill it down to, 3 or 4 basic takeaways from that narrative. Okay. I wouldn't put it into the form of, so I would view that as raw data, but pull out of that let's just call it 3 or 4 sentences that are the essence. Hey, there are
Okay.
multiple programs available. We should apply, we spoke to the DHCD. They said we should apply, whoever does it should apply to multiple programs.
Why don't I take another stab at that then and
Yeah,
send
that
it
sounds
back to
great.
you?
And we're still in a rough stage.
Okay.
So you
Yep.
got the raw data. Now we're just like the other sections I'm working on, refining them. Jesse's refining his. So yeah, and that's where we're at. We're all refining right now.
I threw it on a couple pages. Now I'll just pull some out.
Yeah,
It'll be fine.
It's like doing a book report, right? You read the whole book and then you pull out 3 or 4 points and you call it a report.
I've written books before, and you know what? It's never done until it's done. So
Have you written books, really?
yeah, 3, 4, 5 drafts of a manuscript, and
Oh wow.
you want to kill yourself at some point, but it gets better each time.
And then, so really quick, as now that Alex is here, I had a thought about maybe something for Alex. But before that, just before we leave zoning, Jesse, I was just thinking for next steps, if between now and our next meeting, because you're kind of the zoning czar on our subcommittee here. Like, I was going to go into the details of the adaptive reuse to flesh that out, but do you want this elderly housing bylaw that Katrina said, hey, there's actually 3 units available. Do you want to take a stab at doing a deeper dive into the elderly housing bylaw and maybe doing a blurb of, 3 or 4 sentences for that section, Romanet 5? And
Yep.
does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, and then Alex, I have a vague recollection. Welcome, by the way. Oh, I think you're on mute. I think you're still on mute.
Okay, is that any better?
Yeah, you're back. You're here.
Okay. For what it's worth, this might be what you're going to ask. I'm set, I think, to sit before the Historic Commission next week to see what input they can give us in terms of funding and that kind of thing.
Oh, good. That'd be great. And then I had a thought to see if you'd be interested in doing something between now and our next meeting. And maybe that's part of talking to the Historical Commission. In our narrative, we're going to be talking in various parts about how this is an historic building, but it's a little unclear to me exactly what our classification is. Like I don't know, a couple months ago, went onto the website for the National Historical Places, and I went to the Massachusetts Historical Places, and this property is listed, but they have different categories and they have like different codes. And like some of them, this is not going to be exactly right, but some of them are sort of ambiguous as to what their status is. Like some of them say application status, or, there's different categories for whether it really is deemed to be an historical property per se as a technical matter, or whether it's just listed as, again, I'm just speaking vaguely, a list of a property of interest, but may not actually have protection. So I couldn't quite figure it out when I spent, I don't know, like an hour clicking around the National Historical website, the Mass Historical Commission website, and I just couldn't really nail down exactly what our status was. Do you think that's
my signal is coming and going, but that's kind of my bailiwick, and I've worked with that somewhat on a
yeah, I know you expressed an interest in the historical
so
aspects
I will
of this.
research it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that's my thing. So I will research it and email out what I find to everybody.
Okay, good. And you can also report back, at our next meeting, what you find.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and it may be as easy as when you go to the Historical Commission, asking them, because they might have the answer. They may understand. They probably do understand.
I think I'll start with the state, because a lot of that goes on with over on Cambridge Street and Boston. A lot of that is coordinated.
Just a suggestion, it may be worth having, calling up Kate Battle, because she's on the Historical Commission, and she may know
Yeah,
the
I'm in
answer right
touch
off the
with
top of
her.
her head as to what the status of our property is, or know,
Okay.
have some master list and know what the different categorizations and vagaries of these different, these different statuses are. So,
Actually, I've been in touch with her on that, and I'll ask her.
oh, good. Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That's sort of the only things I had. I think we're continuing to move and refine and add some things to our report. Anyone else want to talk about anything else while we're?
I had a thought.
Yeah.
Did we want to have anything from Housing Authority, Alex, in terms of input on their desire to manage this
It's
property?
an odd time. We don't have a we don't have a director anymore. She went off to Florida, and the assistant is very good, and she has a lot of information. I'll check with her, but the committee. I already brought it up to the commission, and they indicated they're interested in helping any way they can, and even help managing it if and when the time comes. But then the person that said that is the director, and she's no longer there. So we're looking for a new director if anyone's interested. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks for that update. Thank you.
All right. So I don't know. I thought I'd just move on to plan the next meeting. And any other thoughts before we go to that, Jesse, or
Not
Joe
for
or
me.
Alex?
Well, I sent everyone an email, and just pretend I'm stupid. We may not be pretending. If someone could just send out the day before or the day of the meetings, the link, because I was in my car on my cell phone thumbing through our emails, and the link just didn't pop out to me. And all the other meetings I attend, we get the link the day of or the day before.
Oh, I thought, did Jesse, did your email have a link or no?
Yeah, I think that did go out, Alex. So
Wasn't in my maybe it's my fault, but it wasn't in my system. I scanned for it and couldn't find it.
so Alex,
did
I mean,
get
if you don't have a link, you can always text me and say, "Can you send me a link?" Because I could just forward.
Now, that's my other thing. I don't. I tried to text Tom, and Tom, your cell phone no longer goes to you. The number I have. So if we could send
Thank
out,
God, I need some
maybe I'd
peace
be
and
willing to
quiet.
distribute everyone's text number that's willing to have it distributed. I'm willing to have mine distributed.
So Alex, I texted you from my cell phone, so you have me now.
Yes, I have you now. True.
And Alex, I'll shoot you my cell phone number so you have mine for text purposes in the future too.
Please. Yeah, please. Because your old
Yeah,
one
will do.
goes to someone else now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So let's talk about next meeting. You want to say in like 3 weeks, like 28 or 29?
I'm pulling up my calendar.
Okay.
I'm doing the same. Actually, I just got to my computer so I can have more information.
28, 29 is fine with me.
28 or 29, either one.
Yep.
We're talking of this month now, September?
Yeah, like 3 weeks.
I'm sure it's fine with me, but it's just coming up.
Okay. Yeah, take your time.
I've never seen such a blank day. It happened all day.
Work for
So
you,
we're talking
Jesse,
what time
too,
again?
or
The 29th is ideal.
is what?
Ideal.
Ideal. Okay, gotcha. So let's do the 29th. 7 o'clock. Good for everybody again.
Yep.
Sure.
Beautiful. All right. So
We'll have
Let's-
a meeting of the Housing Authority before that. So I'll bring it up there again and ask if they have any input. And if
Good.
anyone has any specific questions you want me to ask them, just text or email it to me.
Okay, sounds great. All right, well, that sounds good. Should we adjourn?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Jesse,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
and I say aye. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. And Jesse, I'm seeing you tomorrow at 9:30.
I'll be there at 9:15.
I'll be there at like 8:45 if you want to come early and hit balls.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great,
And
thank you.
get set up. All right, sounds good. See you guys.
Have a good
All
one.
right, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.